Greetings, my fellow guardians of the galleries. I'm William Young, correctional officer, author, and advocate for the correctional profession. And today's topic is trauma. I know you'd rather talk tactical handcuffing or listen to me rant about administration, but be patient. Hear me out. See, I believe that one of the most dangerous things that we face as officers is our own obstinance, our own stubbornness, our inability to admit that the things that we see and hear on a daily basis can change us, can affect us in a negative way. I feel like this happens because we have a misconception of what trauma is, of what trauma looks like. I feel like most of us think that you have to be part of some large-scale, super violent event to be traumatized. Maybe a murder, a mass shooting, a terrorist attack. But trauma is much more complicated than that. See, trauma is anything that is disturbing or deeply distressing to the person experiencing it. Trauma is the emotional shock that a person experiences following a stressful event or a serious injury. And trauma is tricky, it's sneaky, and subjective. Let me explain. It's tricky because trauma is part of our job. We're exposed to it so often that we don't even recognize it when it happens. Think of all the things you've witnessed or responded to over the years. No, right now, I want you to think of them right now. I'll wait. What'd you come up with? Let me know. Go ahead and drop them in the comments below. Did you think of the fights, the fires, the riots, the medical emergencies, witnessing an inmate self-mutilate, the homicides, the suicides, a psychotic break? Have you ever been part of an execution team or an extraction when it went south? Have you ever watched a partner of yours get put on a stretcher and carried out? This trauma, these disturbances, are frequent occurrences for most of us. In a given shift, we might respond to several of these aforementioned situations. And some days, we don't even have time between brawls, between brouhahas, between codes to finish our reports, let alone emotionally process the nonsense we are just a part of. And that's dangerous. But here's the scary part. When I asked, I bet none of you thought of a situation that was almost an altercation. You probably don't realize or subscribe to the notion that nothing has to happen to you for something to happen to you. Let me say that again, and maybe you should write this down. Nothing has to happen to you for something to happen to you. And all of the things that we've talked about thus far, is it thus or this? I'm not sure why I even said that. Look at me talking like some adjunct professor at a community college. Look, all of the things that we've talked about this far have been examples of trauma. Direct trauma. Trauma that you've experienced for yourself, right? Something that you were a part of. But here's the twist. And this is why trauma is so sneaky. Check this out. What about the time you negotiated with an individual that had a weapon and you were successful and nobody got hurt? And what about the inmate that was refusing to go back to his cell at the end of his rec time? Remember the standoff? The two of you standing toe to toe? You saying go and him saying no. And then right before the moment that you decide to go hands-on, he backs off and walks into his room without incident. What happens to us then? To our bodies? To our blood pressure? What happens to our nerves? What happens when we hear the words, "I'm going to kill you"? Have you been threatened yet? Go ahead and leave me a thumbs up in the comment section if you're part of the "I'm going to kill you or your family when you're at work" club. Believe it or not, subscribe to it or not, those interactions are traumatic. Just think about it for a second. Have you ever watched that movie where some hero cop is trying to disarm an explosive device? And his hands are all shaky and he's sweating because the fate of the entire metropolitan area is in his hands. What happens? At the last second, the hero saves the day. And that's like us. Every interaction we have at work on shift has the potential to explode. We spend a large portion of our day de-escalating, disarming bombs. We're really good at it. Well, most of us are. But the problem is, after a long, hard day of disarming bombs, de-escalating cons, our nerves are shot. We're emotionally tapped out. So we just go home and veg on the couch. But it's not really because we're physically tired. I mean, maybe a little bit, but more so we're mentally wiped, drained, because every interaction, every traumatic encounter causes change. Now, for some of us, that change is minute, but for some of us, that change is monumental. So here's the subjective part. Remember in the beginning, I said trauma is tricky, sneaky, and subjective? And this is important, so you might want to write this down. I don't know why I keep telling you to write stuff down. Kind of makes me feel official. Look, trauma affects everybody differently. That's why some of you are watching this video with an open mind thinking, hey, this guy makes sense. And some of you think I'm crazy and everything that I've said is nonsense. But here's the deal. We all react differently to the things that we're exposed to. You know that saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure? Well, it's kind of like that. You may be more resilient than I am, or have a greater capacity to handle the horrendous things that happen inside. You may have a strong supporting cast of friends and family that you can confide in, or you may just have a better therapist than I do. But either way, and here's what I want you to really remember about trauma, just because you can handle it doesn't mean that everybody else can. And this is important too. Just because a person is having problems processing or coping with the things that they've seen or been exposed to doesn't mean that they should quit or that they're unfit to do the job. Having trouble sleeping after seeing a body hanging in a cell is normal. It's a normal reaction to an abnormal event, and we need to help each other through those events. We need to offer our fellow officers support the same way that we would do for a physical injury. Folks, this trauma thing is real, and the negative effects that this environment can have on our mental health is real. So be honest with how you feel, and allow yourself the time to heal. Look, here's how I want you to look at this. Remember your self-defense class? Of course you do. Do you remember what your self-defense instructor told you when he stood up in front of you and said, I'm going to teach you these skills, these tactics to protect yourself? Did he guarantee that everybody in the room was going to be assaulted? Did he guarantee that everyone in the room was going to be stabbed or shanked or choked out or beat to death with a fire extinguisher? No. So what your self-defense instructor told you, or should have told you, was that the proper ingredients are there to make the perfect storm, to create a situation where you could be assaulted. And then they showed you tips and tricks and how to hold your hands and how far to stand back in case a situation arose or an opportunity presented itself to an inmate to assault you. They didn't guarantee that this was going to happen. And so this is how I want you to look at the trauma aspect of this job, the mental health aspect of this job. When I talk about this kind of thing, or when I write about or speak about the way that the environment can affect us mentally, I'm not saying 100% you're going to become depressed or anxious or need medication or talk to a therapist or become suicidal. But what I'm saying is that all of the elements are there for this job to affect you in a negative way. And if you aren't actively combating, right, or acknowledging that threat, that over time this environment will erode who you were before putting on the badge, before working in this career. I don't really know how to make myself any more clear. Guys, if you found value in this video, let me know in the comments below. And before you go, before you get too far down in the rabbit hole of YouTube videos, like and share this video. And make sure to subscribe to Guardian RFID for more premium correctional content like this. All right, guys, that's all I got. Until next time, be smart, stay safe, stay sane, and we'll talk soon.